Humans are among the most odd creatures in Xamian existence, mainly because they are explicitly ignorant of the Latora, a concept that nearly all other Latoran beings know of and respect. The fiction portrays them as an uneducated population in the backwaters of the Medialitis, which, despite being the center of the Latora, is barren and generally unpopulated, as it was recently generated. The earliest precursor to humanity was a primal species of arboreal reptilian creatures spread across the planet. They would have likely gone extinct if let alone, but an exiled creature from the Microlatora named Anak made his way to Earth and had a child with one of these early humans. The mother's name was Hasishi, likely an overlap of the telling of Trobosia's story or something akin to that. Regardless of who was actually named Hasishi, she bore a child named Elagabalus, the first Anakim. Anak spent some time teaching humanity his language, Olvasan, and left the planet to go get an ocean's worth of milk. Elagabalus married and had many children, starting all of the branches of the Anakim, who soon conquered Earth, which they named Yon, and enslaved the lesser humanity, breeding them like livestock for meat or eggs. They built cities, and civilization flourished as they learned how to access the Maw and travel using jawgates. The solar system and eventually the galaxy were colonized relatively quickly, only taking 100,000 years or so. By this time, humanity looked nothing like before. Due to a slight Anakim admixture, humans resembled primates in appearance, but they retained muscular tails and scaly skin under their sparse hair. Some stayed as meat animals, being crossbred with a Bondu brought from Ofasu by traders utilizing the Maw. Others were used as slave labor or subjects for the priests of Asishi's inquisition techniques or anatomical experimentation. A certain Anakim rose through the ranks of the immense Anakite military, dueling any and every one that he could find until the rulers of the Anakim for millennia, the seniors of Elagabalus, bowed the knee to him. During his several million-year reign in the Conglomerate Wars, Belial conquered nearly all of the Microlatora and Ofasu, earning him the moniker Kabanakzam, or King of All. Once the war had settled a bit, Belial grew bored, but actually began governing his empire instead of endlessly fighting. He gave humanity and several other slave populations more rights. Not outright emancipation, but general rights, such as requiring owners to have suitable housing, rations, and humane conditions for slaves, as well as the ability to vote in what few elections Anakalp held. This was not an act of compassion. Belial found the idea of ruling and solving problems without violence novel, though others didn't see it that way. Ironically, many felt he was encroaching on their rights, and some of Belial's soldiers, also fed up with the mundanity of civilian life, deemed their leader too soft and unfit to rule. Their attempted coup lasted only 10 minutes, as he cut them down remorsefully and angrily. The King of All returned to his boredom, slumped into a deep depression, and sought solace in his religious righteousness, but even that waned as his surety in the faith wavered. The aptly named short story, Belial, takes place at this point. Belial asks Hus for his opinion on Hasishi's will, as Hus was the last of her priests, her voice to mortality. You're in timeout. Stay here until Mom says you can get up. Belial argues with Hus until eventually relenting, and waiting so long that his body dies. But apparently, his soul lived on, and the spiritual realm, and Saw as a tangent I'm not going down. So let's just say that due to plot, his soul lives on inside of his dead body. That story is wild, but has significance, as it comes up in Advocall, and leads to the loss of humanity's ignorance. During the slumber, Hus releases humanity and gives them access to mysticism, which, with their numbers, allows them to conjure a planet-wide ice age. This traps Hus and the sleeping Belial, the only Anakim left for unknown reasons, in the capital of Anakalp, which eventually ends up in Antarctica due to continental drift. The next era of humanity is forgetfulness, in which most humans forget mysticism, and the ones that do remember are very stifled in their capabilities or potency. Over the eons, mysticism was remembered in a simplified and ineffective form, and the basic intelligence gained from their breeding disappeared in the slog of survival, until its revival, millions of years later. Religion and myth became heavily entwined with the human experience. Tendranus, a half-human himself, believes that many of the early gods humans worshipped were simply the vague remembrances of their masters, passed down and corrupted through oral tradition or via some odd genetic recollection. Jumping ahead to the Middle Ages, we see in the Bastion of Sloth Creek that there were two kings, once at war, but allying upon the realization of a larger threat, Naniuk. Naniuk has always held a special hatred for Earth, as it is his beloved son's grave, and perhaps he incarnated simply to visit. In either case, he or humanity attacks the other. I can only assume Naniuk's avatar is intensely weak when first conceived, because the two kings managed to imprison him deep beneath the bastion, specifically with chains veined with malachite and chrysocolla. Whether those are a god's kryptonite or not has yet to be proven, Still, I doubt extra-dimensional entities can be stopped by some materials. I think it is important for someone who doesn't yet understand the structure of Xamian existence to know that Not-Nuke exists outside of the Latora on his own plane of existence. Just because you captured or slew his avatar does not mean you have killed or even harmed him in any way. In fact, doing such is like defeating a figment of his imagination. The Not-Nuke captured in the Bastion of Sloth Creek is one of these avatars, and because the avatar decided to manifest as an infant, it allowed humanity to seal him. Barely. Well, why did he change form whenever he was released? That's not known for sure, but I assume it was to stretch the avatar's legs for a little while before returning to the main body. As the avatar doesn't do anything to Clark and the other child, it manifests, spawns worshippers on Earth, then dips back because this was only supposed to be a short trip to remember his son. Sorry for the rant. Alexandria, the organization, not the library, acquired this and other such instances with accompanying evidence. Alexandria is essentially a more militant version of Mensa, a secret society of intellectuals that maintains and protects esoteric knowledge for humanity's, but mainly their own protection. The main force of Alexandria is the Inquisitores Intellectus, a fanatically religious military fully devoted to embodying foreign bonds, endless pursuit of knowledge, and pacification of emotions, leading to the various branches of the Animi Modus. Basically, soldiers involved in the Animi Modus undergo intensive training to rid themselves of the feeling that most strongly overpowers them. For example, a hothead will be trained to be the most unfeeling regarding their rage. Nothing like that will blind them unless they require the pent-up strength built up over the decades. Inquisitors have controlled ongules before, which indicates that the creatures fear or respect them enough to obey, which is wild because ongules, while mortal, originate from Olfasu, which is a much higher plane than the Medialitus, so that kind of gives us an idea of their strength. It is incredibly likely that the Inquisitors helped the two kings seal Not-Nuke, as otherwise they would have been swamped by the Babe's Birth followers, as depicted in the mural. But this is all intense speculation and trying to peek behind the curtain at the background information that isn't explicitly told to us. History as we know it continues as such until the events of Advocal, of which there isn't a canon time period for it taking place, but there is a futuristic monopoly with Controlites, so it may be a modern era with alterations. In any case, there's not much more to the broader history of humanity that we know, and I think this video is decently comprehensive, if not a little wide and shallow. If you'd like to see more, just ding all three down below. Until next time, Ugrai Ray.